I'll just give this a few seconds for people to log in, then we'll go ahead and get started with today's presentation. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started here in a second. We're just kind of giving a few moments for people to get logged in. We all might not be right on exactly 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, let's just get started so that way anyone joins, they'll catch the gist of this presentation. So thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about the SBIR STTR program. So first, a little bit about who we are. We're the Monterey Bay Apex Accelerator. We used to be called PTAX, Procurement Technical Assistance Center, but we've rebranded, so now we're the Apex Accelerator. Locally, we're administered by the Monterey County Business Council. Apex Accelerators are funded through the Department of Defense, and they've been mandated by Congress since 1985. So we've been around a long time and not going anywhere. There's actually 96 Apex Accelerators across the United States and U.S. territories, and there's 7 within the state of California. I'll show you a map in a second of where these other Apex Accelerators are located. And the mission of all Apex Accelerators is to promote economic growth and employment opportunities in the local markets they serve. And we do that by facilitating your access to the government marketplace. Although we're federally funded, that government marketplace means federal, state, or local government opportunities. Here's this map that I was mentioning. So we're this teal area in the middle of the state, Central Coast, Central Valley. So these other colored areas are the other various Apex. So if you're from one of these other counties, you can either contact them directly or we can refer you to our colleagues at one of those other centers. All the Apex sellers have excellent counselors and very knowledgeable on topics related to government contracting. So these are the services that all Apex Accelerators do. First and foremost is we provide confidential services to you. So what you tell us doesn't go anywhere. Most of what we want to do is through one-on-one counseling is learn about your business first, foremost, what you've done in the past, what you're currently doing, and then your goals for government contracting. So we can kind of develop a plan of attack to help you out. So with that, that's pre-award assistance. We'll teach you how to go out and find opportunities that are out there, again, at the federal, local, or state level. Help you review these opportunity notices that you see. And because they can be really confusing, they can be very long, and we can point out the areas you need to focus on. And then talk about what are called capability statements. Capability statements, just briefly, is a one-page document that is a line card promotional piece about your company, but it's formatted in a way that government buyers like to see. Then post-award assistance, conflicts do arise, so we can kind of coach you on, what you can and should not do if something like that happens. Talk to you a little bit about debriefings. Those actually a debrief can happen pre-award or post-award, but most of them do take place post-award. And then with protests, protests are something that oftentimes people feel that they should have been awarded a contract, and we can talk to them about it. It's doing a protest is something that's much more formalized. And typically what we'll do is talk to you whether it makes sense or not. Oftentimes suggest to you that if you're going to do a protest, that then it's you need to hire legal counsel in order to help you in that process. And so part of that would just be what's the dollar amount are we talking about? Is it really worth going through all the hassle of a protest when you're talking about a contract that maybe is $100,000 contract, and even if you won the protest, half the money on that would be spent with legal fees. Outreach events. We attend these events promote the events that are out there. So it's a great way for you to attend these events, meet buyers from different government agencies, prime contractors who do a lot of government work and are looking for subcontractors, etc. At these events, oftentimes we're there as subject matter experts providing trainings. We'll continue to be doing these webinars. Bid matching is a service that we provide where we use a third-party vendor that has a system that basically will go out and search literally thousands of government websites where they are posting their contracting opportunities. And then what we do is we work with you, create a profile, basically get keywords that we upload into their system. So then on a daily basis, their system goes out and searches all these websites. And then if there's any matches to your profile, to opportunities that are out there, they're just sent directly to you in your email. So it saves you all the time of having to go to these different websites yourself. Certification programs, we help you navigate certification programs, talk to you about whether they really even make sense for your business. Certainly, oftentimes people do are members of a certain socioeconomic category, such as a woman-owned business or a veteran-owned business. But in some cases, it doesn't even make sense. So we can kind of talk to you whether it makes sense for the kind of business that you have. There's a lot of different certifications. I do a whole presentation on the various certifications that are out there, etc. So there's woman-owned certification. The DBE stands for Disadvantaged Business Enterprise, Service Disabled Veteran-Owned, 8A, HubZone. But we help you with that process, help you understand the qualifications that are required, all the documents that are required, so that if it does make sense, so that you really understand the process of obtaining the certification. One of the great things is there's no fees or commitments to you. So again, we're your tax dollars at work, so take advantage of that. With that, I'd like to introduce a great strategic partners of ours, the Central Coast Small Business Development Center, and their program director, Roger Gilbert. Roger, take it away.
Thank you, Victor. The Small Business Development Center has a similar mission. We provide high quality one-on-one consulting free of charge. We're funded by the SBA. We're funded by the state of California and local municipalities and other local partners. So we can provide this free of charge, and we are helping small businesses or even startup businesses with services that they need. So writing a business plan, working on marketing, social media, IT, human resources, whatever issues that you're having, we can provide an advisor to help you with those issues and to help you grow your business, increase your revenue, hire more people, which is what the mission ultimately is, to grow business in our local communities. And so also, again, no cost, no obligation. We have bilingual advisors, so language should not be a issue for English and Spanish anyway. We have some other languages, other advisors with other language skills available, but most of the time it's English or Spanish. And just let us know if we can be of help. I'm the director of the Central Coast SBDC, which covers Monterey and San Benito counties, but there are SBDCs covering other counties. So if you go to the SBDC California website, you can choose your local SBDC, or you're free to contact me for a referral. We'll make sure we get you to the right place. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Roger. Yes, they're a great strategic partner of ours for you. Take advantage. Oftentimes when we talk to a client, we'll actually say, well, why don't you work in conjunction with them, with us at the same time? Or it could be that somebody's a brand new startup, and really we don't really work in general with startups. We'll say, go work with the SBDC, develop a business plan, get some traction underneath you, and then come back and see us in about a year or so. There's just a great resource. One thing I want to say is you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint that you're looking at. I just noticed that there is an error on this one where it's got an incorrect URL for the Central Coast SBDC. So I'll correct that. So when you get it, you'll get the right web address there. So, but you'll get that, and then you'll get a link to this recording of the presentation. So let's just jump into today's presentation. So the SBIR, STTR, and I say SBIR, some people call it SBIR. So if you hear SBIR, it's the same thing. This is what they mean: small business research and small business technology transfer. And I'll talk to you about both programs and what they can and can't do for you, and then sort of the difference between the two. So the mission of the SBIR STR program is to support scientific excellence and technological innovation through the investment of federal research funds and critical American priorities to build a strong national economy. So that part is really important. The part that I'll get into this, but this is straight from their website. But the program goals basically is they want to stimulate technological innovation. So they know that there's emerging technologies always happening and stuff, so they want to stimulate that. They want to meet federal research and development needs, and that's something we'll talk about more later in the presentation. But the federal government has identified areas that they want to research and see further development on, and this is what their focus is on. They focus and encourage participation in innovation and entrepreneurship with anybody, but stronger focus on women and socioeconomically disadvantaged people. And the program goal is to increase private sector commercialization of innovations derived from federal research and development funding. So the idea is to fund an idea so eventually it'll be commercialized, not just for the federal government per se, but it could be, but maybe both the federal government as well as private sector. And then in addition, the STTR program, and again, like I said, I'll share the differences between the SBIR and STTR, is to foster technology transfer through cooperative research and development between small business and research institutions. And typically, in most cases, when you think of research institutions, they're talking about research universities. So this is important here. So what does an SBIR STR firm look like? So these are some of the key things. It must be a for-profit company. So it can't just be an individual. It actually has to be an entity, a business, for profit, U.S. owned and operated, and under 500 people, meaning that it's a small business. In that U.S. owned, you'll go through a process that's called the FOCI, where they'll look at and evaluate whether you meet what's called foreign owned or controlled or interest. So they'll really look to make sure that the technology is being protected from any foreign bad actors, that it's a U.S. owned company. The research work must be done in the United States, and that the focus is on performing research and development. And you'll see the process of this, but in the beginning, it's all about research and development. And then funding, this is really important, is not for purchasing equipment, commercializing a technology that has already been developed, or one that has very low risk and only needs capital. So it's not a funding or a financial instrument, it's to develop technology. So I mentioned that the SBIR and the STTR are similar, but there are differences. So I'll go through these in this chart here. So the SBIR program permits partnering. So it could be that you have two companies that are partnering in doing this effort. The STTR requires a nonprofit research institution partner. So with the the STTR, it's a requirement that you have a partner, and that partner needs to be a research institution. Again, typically that research institution is going to be a university. This one is really important. I'll talk more about this in some later slides. This primary principal investigator is with the SBIR program, it needs to be their primary employment. Greater than 50% of their time must be with this small business that has an SBIR grant. With the STTR program, the principal investigator can be employed either by the research institution or the small business. So it could be either one, but it'll vary. In some, it says here, like in parentheses, check solicitation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the solicitation will actually dictate if in fact, say the PI, the principal investigator, needs to be employed by either one or the other, either the small business or the research institution. So work requirement. So you can subcontract some of the work, and you can see that, and you'll see here it says 33%, phase 1, 50%, phase 2. And I'll talk about these phases in a second, but you can subcontract some of the work as you're developing and doing your research. With the STR program, as a minimum, 40% of it needs to be done by the small business, and 30% of it needs to be done by the research institution or partner. Program size. These are just some older facts, but that you can see here, it was in fiscal year 19, it was $3.28 billion were dedicated to the SBIR program, and for the STTR programs, much less, 453 million. And you'll kind of see why when I start showing the participating agencies. Majority venture capital ownership for the SBIR is allowed in some of the agencies, and the STTR program, majority venture capital ownership is not permitted. Participating agencies. So with the SBIR, there's 11 federal agencies that participate in the SBIR program. But with STTR program, part of those 11, there's only 5 that actually participate in the STTR program, and I'll show you those here in a second. So here's just a chart of the SBIR and STR participating agencies. So you can see all of these that are shown here are SBIR, but the ones in green are both SBIR and STTR. So you can see it's Department of Agriculture, Commerce, Defense, Education, DOT, the Transportation, Homeland Security, Energy, so on. So again, just depending on the type of research you want to conduct, more than likely it's going to be one of these agencies that's going to would potentially fund the kind of research and development that you're looking for funding for. So we saw a little bit earlier, I was talking a little bit about there's phase 1, phase 2. So the SBIR program is a 3-phase process. So in phase 1, it's concept development. Basically, you've given a proposal to the government, kind of describe your concept somewhat, but during phase 1, which typically is a 6-month to 1-year period, you can see the funding is anywhere from about $50,000 to $250,000. That helps you kind of more on paper really develop that concept so that you know that it'll be successful. And then when you make a final presentation to your funding agency, then the likelihood of obtaining a phase 2, where then you would actually develop a prototype, then actually maybe physically start building something. So that period can be up to 24 months, and you can see that the funding is much greater, 500,000 up to 1.5 million. In phase 3 is the commercialization phase. There's no SBIR funding there, because the idea, of course, is that phase one, you've got an idea that you think really will address a need that the government has identified. In phase two, you develop that to the fact that you actually have then a prototype. And then in phase three, either A, you're going to start just selling it to the private sector, or it could be that in phase three, because you've worked, say it's a Department of Defense, SBIR, then Department of Defense may say, look at it and say, yeah, we've been tracking this. We've been excited about this project since you first proposed it. And so now we're going to go ahead and start placing orders for the product that you've developed. So let me go a little bit more detail in these phases. So in phase one, this is key part is you're establishing the technical merit, the feasibility and commercial potential of the proposed research and development efforts. So that's what you're doing in phase one. Then you determine the quality performance of the small business awardee organization prior to providing further federal support in phase two. So once you finish phase one, the agency that funded that will look at it to see whether all the work that you did in that first phase warrants, funding for phase two. And if you haven't done a good job at phase one, the phase two funds don't come in. Again, phase one awards are generally between $50,000 to $250,000 for 6 months to a year. One of the things that I was in Chicago, I don't know, last month, but they were saying that what they're doing to make the process even easier is that they are with phase one and even sometimes in phase two, issuing a award for just slightly under 250,000, because then it allows the federal agency to use what's called a simplified acquisition process, which makes it easier to provide the funding, which is actually a good news, because right now there is a big push by the U.S. government to fund technology and innovation. So in phase two, you're still going to be continuing the research and development you're doing, but again, what you're wanting to do is then start actually physically maybe building something that will prove that the research that you've done in phase two actually works. The scientific and technical merit and commercial potential of the project proposed in phase two. So again, you're just moving along the pathway of, you had an idea, you developed it, you developed a plan. So now you're actually then developing prototypes in this phase two. And ideally by the end of phase two, that you actually will have something then that you can start commercializing. And then phase three, the objective, again, where appropriate, is for the small business to pursue commercialization objectives resulting from the phase one and two activities. One of the things that, I'll go into more detail later, but even in phase one, you need to address what will be the commercial applications for the technology you want to develop. So that is really critical, that, it's just not doing research for the sake of doing research. The whole idea is that the funding will lead to the commercialization of whatever it is that you're working on. It's important to remember that SBIR programs do not fund phase three, but oftentimes, once you get into phase three, it does make it easier. So like this last bullet point, it says at some federal agencies, phase three may involve follow-on non-SBIR funded research and development or production contracts for products, process, or services intended for use by the U.S. government. So again, you develop that research, maybe in that phase one and two, you're getting close, but you're still not quite there, but you need additional funding. So that government agency, then there's other ways to fund stuff, and they can find that to do further research, or like I mentioned earlier, then actually be your first customer in purchasing the product that you've developed. So I mentioned early on that when we were comparing the SBIR and STR program, this principal investigator, and it's really important. It's key to this. So every SBIR and STR proposal must designate a single individual who will serve as the principal investigator. And the principal investigator has overall responsibility for the project and therefore must be credible in terms of his or her education, work, and project management experience. With that one, it's like, and then you can see it, the next bullet point said PhD is a strong preference. For a long time, I thought having a PhD was a requirement, and it's not. But the culture of the SBIR world is that the people that review the applications that come in, the proposals, pretty much are all PhDs, and they kind of feel that if someone should be awarded, they should kind of have those same kind of credentials. But more importantly, it's that the PI's education, work, and project management experience must fit the technology that needs to be developed. So as an example, if I have a PhD, say in education, but all of a sudden I'm pursuing a funding an SBIR program to develop some kind of solar technology, but none of my background is in that area, then more than likely they wouldn't consider me as a qualified candidate as a PI. They would look for somebody that has a strong background in their education, work experience, project management experience in developing solar technology. And again, this last one here is the PI must be primarily employed by the applicant small business during the SBIR award period. So 20 hours per week minimum. And so what that means is, of course, that the PI has to work for the company at least 20 hours per week. It can be more. One of the things that I've seen for like a successful client that we have is that the owner of the company is a PhD and he works full-time in the business. So it was really easy for him. But in other cases I've seen where people have an idea, a concept that they want to develop, but they don't know anybody with the background that is required in order to find a PI. Or if they find a PI, again, that PI needs to be working for them primarily. They can't have another job where they're working 30 hours a week. So that can become a big challenge when they're trying to identify a PI that they can assign to the SBIR grant. A little bit more on what does primary employed PI mean. The PI cannot be fully employed elsewhere during the SBIR award period. Now, again, with the STTR, I don't want to confuse this too much, the PI can be like a professor at the university who's the partner in that STTR. But with the SBIR, you couldn't have somebody like that. Again, their primary job needs to be working for that company. And then he has to devote a minimum hours to the SBIR program. So again, at least 20 hours per week. And that can vary by agency. And then you'll see that in the documentation, the request for proposal, which they call the solicitation. The PI too, the cost for bringing that person on board must be shown in the budget. So you want to be able to do that. And that's one of the things that you'll be doing in the process is identifying your PI, their credentials, etc., and then how much that you'll be paying for them. So again, like it says here, carefully read the agency solicitation for the minimum hours. So it can vary, but depending on what it is, it might actually be more than 20 hours per week. So this is a great place for you to start with the SBIR program is going to this website, sbir.gov. And I'll show you some screenshots of it, but this is the landing page. One thing is you can see these arrows here is that this image here will change to different things, but to familiarize yourself with the SBIR program is it's click down here where it says find opportunities. Once you do that, I'll show you in the next slide kind of what you'll see, but just a little bit about just topics and solicitations. Topics basically are the areas of research that the government agency would like to see done. So they identify them as topics. So as you can see in this first bullet point, they're intertwined. Basically, topics are developed first, and then the agency will develop a solicitation. Solicitations then are posted, and then this website here, sample topics, you'll be able to go there and you can see them. And I'll like I said, in a second here, I'll show you some of them. And then on SBIR.gov, they're suggesting that you actually go to the agency's websites for the latest topics and solicitations. It's important to note that there's only one funding round per year. So if you have an idea or something like that, it could be that you missed that year's round of funding. So you'll have to wait another year before you can apply. And I'll show you something per that here in a second, which is actually a positive thing. But this last kind of bold statement at the bottom, it says very important. Key point is that unsolicited topics are not considered. So if you have a great idea and stuff like that, it might be that, but basically the government says, these are the topics, these are the areas of research that we would like to see developed. And if it's something that's outside of that, then that's something that they're not even going to look at. So that's something really important to know. Depending on the agency, there are other innovation programs that might allow you to submit a white paper for you to pursue research funding on too, but I'll leave that for another day. So if you clicked on that find opportunities, this is you can see here our topics, and this list kind of goes down. You can see here that it says in the middle of the screen 1 to 10 of 235 results. But just to give you an idea, you can see that on the first one there, you can't really even see the second one, but they give you a kind of a small description of what it is that they're looking for, like human machine interfaces. The technology within the topic is restricted under this is ITAR, etc. But let me go to the next page and you can see it a little bit better. You can see these are the kinds of things that they're looking for just by the titles. Autonomous bridging kit, it's an open topic. And I don't even know what this means. Hexavalent chrome replacement for small caliber barrels, Zernick polynomials via phase recovery. So that's kind of the thing that I want to kind of drive home, is the fact that the government is telling you what it is. And these just happen to be Department of Defense. But if you looked at National Institute of Health, their SBIR, stuff like that, again, it's very complex things, but it's very specific for what they're looking for. One of the things I want to show you here, though, on this one is that you can see here that it says application due date. And you can see that the dates go from October 2021 all the way through June 2024. So basically what I want to convey here is that if you missed one of these due dates, more than likely because of the complexity of the technology they want to be developed, you'll see that topic come up again the following year. They're continuing to fund certain kinds of research in working with a consultant who does nothing but consult on SBIR programs. He said really to put together a winning proposal for an SBIR grant takes about a whole year to put together a winning proposal, budget, getting the right PI and all these kinds of things. So it's important to know that, again, if you just can't meet one of these deadlines, keep working on putting together the proposal, etc., so that you can submit the next funding cycle. One thing that on this one I want to show is the fact that on that website, sbir.gov, if you go over here on the right where it says resources, this is where you'll get to this page where it says tutorials. It's a really good way for you to learn sort of the whole basics of this. And they'll talk about the agencies, the kinds of things that they're looking for, the kind of the whole process, etc. So it's a good way for you to really familiarize yourself with the program so you can better understand the requirements, the processes, etc. I wanted to mention this website or this organization. TABA stands for Technical and Business Assistance. So the federal government actually has funded this TABA program. This one happens to be administered by the LARDA Institute out of Los Angeles, but they help people wherever they happen to be. But one of the things when you think about research, development, scientists, those kinds of things, people know their area of expertise in these various technologies, but they may definitely lack the expertise as far as running a company, how to commercialize something, those types of things. So that's what TABA does. They're much like perhaps like what we mentioned at the very beginning, what the SBDC does to help people write a business plan, those types of things. That's what TABA does, is help people that are looking to pursue a SBIR grant and to developing the commercialization plan for the technology, how they're going to structure it, how they get, how much money it's going to need to maybe get something in production, those types of things. So it's a great resource. And again, like us, like the SBDCs, there's no cost to you to participate with TABA. So it's an excellent resource. And you can see over here on the right, these are just samples of a lot of the federal agencies that are referring companies to. But again, it's important to note that it's never too late to start working with them to develop a commercialization plan. Because again, from the get-go in phase one, they're going to ask about the commercialization of the technology that you're working on. So with that, and a typical proposal, these are some of the things that you'll need to include in that proposal. So a clear description of specific innovations that you have. It's clear, concise, somebody can read it, understand it, and it makes sense. Not just something that you kind of think, and it's got to be specific and easy to understand. And then a credible research and development plan for overcoming the technical challenges. So that's why having somebody as a PI that's really understands research, development, putting together a team and working through a project, seeing it to the end is really important on this. You want to clearly define success metrics. So kind of like a Gantt chart where you've got a timeline of when certain things need to be done and stuff. You want to have those metrics, those milestones of, at this point, we want to have this to complete. At this point, we want to have that. So they need to be clearly defined. As I mentioned with TABA, working with TABA, and again, oftentimes these research scientist type people don't really have the business experience that they need. But in that initial proposal and the subsequent, like for phase two, et cetera, you got to address the commercialization plan. So who's going to be the initial target market? What's the market need for the technology? You know, what's the value proposition of this? You know, if you develop it, you make it, you know, what's the value from it? Is it going to save people money, time, etc., those types of things? You know, they want you to identify who's the competition that's out there that might be working on the same kind of a technology. And then also, please, somebody's got their mic on. Could you mute yourself? And then what would be the competitive advantage of your project being successful? You know, how would you be better than the competition that's out there? And then lastly, you know, you want to identify the intellectual property landscape and the strength of your company's intellectual property. You know, one thing about this too is that sometimes people think that they need to kind of go out first and get like a patent on something before they try to get funding for this. And it really works the other way around, that going through this process that eventually you would get a patent for the technology that you develop. So quickly, here's just some takeaways. You know, the focus is on performing the research and development. That's what the funding is for. The funding is not, again, for purchasing any kind of equipment, commercializing a technology that has already been developed, or one that has very low risk and only needs capital. So again, it's not a funding tool for you to grow your business, to go out and, you know, just buy other equipment. Now, if you need equipment like to conduct testing and those types of things, yes, there's money for that, but it's not just for you to grow your business. Again, there's 3 phases: the concept development stage, the prototype development stage, phase 2, and then phase 3, the commercialization phase. And again, even though in this phase 1, it's concept development, they want the commercialization component of it identified here in your proposal for phase 1, concept development. And I can't overstate the importance of the principal investigator. It needs to be the right person that has the right skill set that matches the technology that you're developing. And basically they need to commit all their time to that. Like I said, some of the most successful ones I've seen, where is that the owner or one of the key employees of a company who knows the technology is the PI. Again, unsolicited topics are not accepted. You know, people come to us and they say, I've got this great idea, I think it's great for an SBIR, but not knowing the landscape of the SBIR world is that, well, unless the government is already saying they want to fund something like that, they're not going to look at it. And then ensure enough time is given to properly prepare a proposal. So typically, if you know, one of the due dates for submitting a proposal is 2 or 3 months away, the likelihood of you putting together a winning proposal is really slim. Like I said, my friend Mark, you know, says basically it takes like a year to really put something together where, you know, you work on one part of it and you set it down, you go back. And so it takes a while. But it's, you know, you think of the dollar value of what we're talking about, the idea of commercializing, it's well worth it. So it's kind of like the more time you put into the better proposal that you'll submit, and you'll be able to take advantage of the fruits of your labor. And then last, I just entered this here. I showed you that website for TABA, Technical Assistance and Business Assistance program, but this is their website right here. So with that, oops, I'll take some questions here in a second, and then here's upcoming webinar topics. Next Tuesday, June 11th, there's going to be a webinar on reshoring and sustaining industrial base of the U.S. We found out during COVID that because of the worldwide challenges of the pandemic, all of a sudden the US became in short supply of some really critical things that it needed for its economy. So the idea is now that the US is working to reshore a lot of different manufacturers. You know, one of the big things that you've seen that you might remember lately is the CHIPS Act, where is that the US is spending, you know, billions of dollars on trying to get chip manufacturing located back here in the United States versus relying on foreign sources. And then on June 13th, we're going to talk about subcontracting and teaming strategies to grow your business. So oftentimes, uh, one of the best ways to get into government contracting is being a subcontractor, or oftentimes you might look at a opportunity and it might be too big for you, but there's not necessarily a reason to pass on it. You just got to realizing that teaming may be a better way to go about creating more success and profit for your business. So this is what that'll address. So with that, I'll take any questions. And I'm not seeing any questions. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to email us here at apex@mcbc.biz, or just give us a phone call and answer your questions. So with that, thank you very much. And then hopefully we'll see you next week for one of the two presentations. Thank you.